Hello, everyone. Welcome to this panel from Northwestern University. Going to give just a few seconds to have everyone make sure everyone's here that's wanting to see this event. We're really glad that you're able to join us today. As December is rolling around, it's always a busy season, but really excited to be able to share this hour with you to be able to talk a little bit about Northwestern, but also to really highlight the voices and experience of many of our different students who are engaged in entrepreneurship here at Northwestern. My name is Paul Compton. I'm one of the associate directors of admission at Northwestern. So I didn't go to Northwestern as an undergrad. However, I've been in the admissions office now for several years. And after years of being in the admissions office talking about Northwestern, I always got asked the question, so what did you study at Northwestern? And I finally got agitated enough that I actually ended up going through Kellogg to get my MBA. So while my experience with some of the entrepreneurship and business dealing with Northwestern are more on the graduate side, I'm really excited to be able to connect with different student workshops and different student organizations that are focused on some of those things and to be able to just share some experiences with you all here today. So that is a little about me. I'm going to have each of our students introduce themselves. Jake, you are next to me, so I'm going to have you start us off. You can just say your name, what you study, and then where you come from, and then a little bit about maybe like a little quick personal pitch about who you are and why you were selected to be on this panel today.
Yeah, definitely. Hi everyone. My name is Jake. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a senior here at Northwestern. I am studying social policy and I have minors in economics and psychology. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And yeah, I've been involved with entrepreneurship and the garage since the garage is the startup generator here on campus. And yeah, I've been involved in both since my freshman year here at Northwestern, primarily through a program called Launch, which launches a program based out of the garage. That's kind of like an entrepreneurship program where students have the chance to learn sort of like the ins and outs of like the business development process. They're split into groups of about 4, and then the program kind of culminates by these, with each of these groups of 4 kind of pitching a product idea that they've spent about 10 weeks developing to a team of Chicago professionals to win grant money to continue furthering along their startup idea, their business idea. So I've been involved in that program as a participant, as a mentor, and most recently as its co-director.
Wonderful, thanks. Elizabeth, do you want to go next?
Hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Savin. I'm a sophomore studying manufacturing and design engineering in the McCormick School of Engineering and Applied Science, as well as the Integrated Marketing and Communication Certificate in the Medill School of Journalism. I'm from Wilmette, Illinois, which is just 15 minutes from our campus here in Evanston. And I have been involved in the garage since my first day here on campus. I actually initially found the garage as my work study position and have been very involved ever since. And currently I'm helping direct the Propel program, which is a program that provides female founders with a grant as well as mentorship and weekly meetings. And we help them for 1 quarter in really getting their project off the ground.
Wonderful. Isaac, can you go next?
Sure. Hi, I'm Isaac. I'm a junior studying computer science, data science, and entrepreneurship, originally from Jakarta, Indonesia. So halfway across the world, basically. And I have been involved in entrepreneurship well before I came to Northwestern, but I think since I still wanted to continue doing that here in Northwestern, I first came into the garage, I think my sophomore year, because my freshman year was basically online, met Mike, the director of the garage, and I really loved the space. And now I am creating a community-based discussion and news aggregation platform called Sky. We're going to be launching actually early 2023. So be on the lookout for that. It's skuy.app on Instagram. Don't forget to follow it. And it's basically, it seeks to unite the Northwestern community campus through discussion and news aggregation. So also part of the Farley Entrepreneurship Minor, an ambassador there, and also a resident team in the garage where, one out of the 33 teams that has residency, which means 24/7 access and, gaining sort of access to resources in the garage, which include mentorship, access to family dinners, and other, opportunities in the garage. So that's what my involvement in entrepreneurship is.
Great, thank you. And Catherine, can you wrap us up?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine. I'm a senior double major in economics and statistics, and I'm pursuing a Kellogg certificate in financial economics. I'm originally from Bethesda, Maryland, and my relationship with entrepreneurship kind of came through a club that is slightly associated with the garage. So I was part of Institute for Student Business Education, and within that, there's a bunch of different sectors, and I was part of Arch. Arch is an entrepreneurship club within that larger business club, and they do a lot of work with the garage. So some of the things I got to do was almost work as like an intern for a quarter at different startups. I've also been a part of a pitch competition that was run by Northwestern. So just kind of was able to dabble around by being part of that club.
Awesome, fantastic. Thank you all for sharing. I think one of the things that I really love about being able to do these student panels is hearing just not only the different opportunities that are available at Northwestern, but just the variety of like academic focuses that students are bringing as they're pursuing all these different things. There's so many different paths. I know on our admission side, we talk a lot about the flexibility and the different opportunities. And hearing your voices and your experiences really do highlight that there's not one particular thing that we can focus on to be able to kind of engage in entrepreneurship. I think that's especially helpful knowing that even though Northwestern doesn't have like a specific business undergrad major, right, that there's still plenty of different opportunities and ways and perspectives that students like yourselves are both academically engaging in these things in the classroom, but also just the variety of different opportunities that are outside of the classroom that are ways just to be able to engage. We've talked a lot about the garage. That is our on-campus incubator. For those of you that are tuning in, it is also called the garage. Kind of as an allusion to many startups that have started in the garage, but it's also part of a parking garage. So it is literally part of our northern parking garage. It's a really cool space. You were able to hear about a couple of different programs. Before we jump into that, I just wanted to ask if you all have like a go-to story of like, we've talked about some of the entrepreneurship that you've been able to do at Northwestern. Do you have like a baby entrepreneurship story? Like what was like an event or a story or a thing that you did that got you kind of hooked into this line of thinking and this kind of activity? Maybe that was, I know kind of like the common experience that people talk about is like, oh, I sold cookies or I did the newspaper route or I did a lemonade stand. Is there anything that you like really got you into this that you knew that when you came to Northwestern that you wanted to be involved in? Or what were some of those things that kind of led you into this area? Feel free if you have a response to that, just jump in. I would love to be able to kind of hear the variety of different ways that people kind of come into this work, and then we can explore a little bit more about what the resources look like at Northwestern.
So I had a really like pretty big experience in high school. So I kind of fell in love with this method of making jewelry. It's called metal clay, and it involves like forming different pieces of jewelry and then putting in a kiln. So it's kind of like a little bit of an elaborate process. And I got hooked on that by just doing like one session as part of like a makerspace club thing I did. And then all of a sudden I just decided, why not start making these and selling them? So I went through the whole process of like designing my own website, marketing it. I even did a pitch competition and was able to raise like $500 to go towards my supplies. So that kind of hooked me on that experience, because it wasn't just like, going outside and selling lemonade like I did as a kid, but it was a little bit more of a step up where I had a website, I had like a Square account and everything. And then when I came and visited Northwestern, because I already had this idea pretty developed, and I came and visited when I was a junior or senior. And I remember my tour guide talked about the garage and I was so intrigued. I did a ton of research after. It's something I included in my Why Northwestern because it was something that I knew that I wanted to get involved in when I got to campus. So I really had a direct path.
Awesome. So thinking about, we've talked a lot about the garage and we've talked about different programs that are there. Isaac, you mentioned your involvement. Can you talk a little bit about how maybe what that looks like in terms of the different, like being a resident there, and what that looks like in terms of the different types of ways that students may be able to be involved with the garage? Not everyone is necessarily interacting with the garage at the same sort of depth or kind of what those different opportunities look like.
Yeah, for sure. I think the garage itself like presents a lot of opportunities depending on how much you want to be involved in the garage. They're sort of like the most like low barrier to entry program is the Tinker program, where a lot of people who sort of like just want to get into entrepreneurship or want to explore a new idea or basically just want to know more about like what the garage is can basically join the program. And in the Tinker program, you get an access to like a weekly newsletter where you learn more about entrepreneurship, learning how to build like agile products, learning how to like assemble a team, manage a team, do strategy, stuff like that. But also at the same time, you get to meet other Tinkers as well, who might be, exploring an idea, who might be potentially a co-founder for you in the future, or just people you want to like talk to and like, explore ideas with. So that would be sort of like the most the lowest barrier to entry. And then after that, I would say there are like more specific programs, like let's say Propel, that's primarily for like women. And then there's also like Jumpstart, which happens in the summer for 10 weeks, where 10 teams for 10 weeks compete. And basically it's just a very like intense accelerator program where you just learn and try to like develop your product and pitch over the course of the 10 weeks. And then you have the resident program, which is probably the program that allows undergraduates and graduates, who already have a business idea and a team to bring that to the next level, right? Going into pitch competitions, maybe asking for more support, for more mentorship, like what is the best step? Like what is the next step in the right direction for my startup, stuff like that. And I know like there are more programs as well. Elizabeth is also really involved in the garage. If I'm missing anything, it would be great if, you sort of can jump in, but yeah, that's probably the ones that are most standard to start with, I would say.
Yeah, I would fully agree with everything that Isaac covered. Some of our other programs include Activate, which is for founders of color. We have a new program starting using the Opportunity Fund, which is for students from low-income backgrounds. And so those are all really great ways for students to really get involved in the garage. We also have an event every quarter called Startup Matchmaking, where about 30 to 40 of the current teams will pitch what they're working on and what kind of help they're looking for. And then there are a bunch of Zoom rooms open and you can hop into different Zoom rooms, speak to different founders. If there's a project that you're really interested in and want to get involved in, that's a great way to do that as well.
Awesome. So I love being able to hear that there's like opportunities for those people that have like a very clear sense of like, this is what I want to do, and this is something that I'm already involved in, but also that there are ability to connect with people and to join a team and to be able to kind of see a vision and see the excitement that's there and to be able to join that as well. Have any of you done any sort of those like matching with another team that or a project that's already been established, or were all of you kind of like, I have an idea and this is what I would like to do? It'd be great if any of you had kind of like a partnership where you joined into another project that maybe you were able to join in later stages of. It'd be great to kind of hear if there what sort of opportunity that looks like and what kind of the process for that is too.
So I've done that a few times, but I did it through the club that I was a part of, Arch, which I had mentioned. And how it worked for us was our leaders, they had a lot of connections in the garage and they would develop a portfolio of startups. Most of them were in garage. Sometimes they were other ones that students had taken full-time after school, but they would kind of feel what those startups wanted. So get the type of people, like what type of skills they were looking for and positions they were trying to fill. And then they would come back to the students in our club and also gather intel on what those students want to do and what skills they have. So for one of mine, I specifically said I kind of wanted to do a little bit more, like I wanted to work with something that had a physical product and I wanted to work a little bit on the sales side of things. And it matched perfectly. Me and another girl who was looking to do more graphic design and marketing, we were both added to the team of Blue Powder Media, which actually the students graduated and they have taken it and are continuing with it. So we are added to that team. We worked with them for a quarter, and we both got to create multiple deliverables. So that was really awesome. And I think the founder really appreciated it because at the time there was just two of them on the team and they were able to get some extra help along the way. So that was kind of my experience, and it was just for one quarter. I know some students have continued with the same projects. It's just kind of up to you and what it looks like for that year. But yeah.
It's also great. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Go.
just to add on that, just like I think that, you know, coming into the garage or like any like entrepreneurship, you know, like club like Arch or like, you know, any other entrepreneurship club, you don't always have to be a founder, or you don't always have to be the one like having the idea. I have friends, you know, who want to have more experience in technology or in product or in design. And, you know, in startup matchmaking or like in other like, you know, programs, you can find ways to, you know, utilize these skills or actually sharpen these skills in different startups, right? So it's not always, you know, you having to come up with an idea. It's totally fine if you don't have one, or if you just want to find cool people who, you know, have ideas or create products that you resonate with. The garage or like different entrepreneurship opportunities in Northwestern can help cater towards that. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of along those lines. Like I mentioned before, a lot of my experiences with the garage came through this program called Launch. And I remember they like have this like one big day. It's kind of like a matchmaking kind of day. Because like I said, a component of the program is you're in groups of 4, and then over 10 weeks, you like design a product, design like a business plan, and then you end up pitching it at the end of the 10 weeks. And yeah, they have like this big matchmaking day where like I remember when I like participated in the program doing it, each person like wrote on sticky notes either like ideas that they had or like particular skills that they have that they feel they can bring to the table. And then for like 45 minutes, you just walked around and like talked with all the different people, and you talked about like what people had written on their sticky notes. And that's kind of like how they facilitated the like group formation process. So it was a very like organic, very like each person getting to talk about, like I said, things that they could bring to the table, ideas that they were really passionate about. And yeah, it was a really cool process.
I love that opportunity to kind of like surface that there's specific skills and different perspectives and things that students are bringing, regardless of that could be connected to so many different projects. It seems like this is the community that you all have been describing is one that's dynamic and like pretty creative and collaborative. Are there how would you kind of describe the community of people that are, whether that's part of the garage or other affiliated business groups? What would you kind of describe like the energy on campus as? Like, is it a small community? Is it growing? What does that look like in terms of what is for people that are really interested in this? What's kind of like the mindset and the cultural vibe that students are participating in at Northwestern?
I would say it's a very collaborative and growing community. I'm actually currently in the garage, and at every table around me, there are groups of students working on projects together, or like if they're working independently, but they have a question, you can just turn to the person next to you, and everyone's always willing to give advice. They want to help other students and really want to see other people's projects grow. Some of the students who are further along in their companies at the garage offer office hours every week where they'll meet with students who are just wanting to get involved and help answer any questions they have. It's a very supportive community, and one that I've heard from a lot of people is where they've met some of their closest friends, and just it's a great space that people love to hang out in.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think you know, one of the reasons I wanted to like do entrepreneurship in college is I think one great thing that the garage does is, you know, it really sort of encourages you to try, and if you fail, like that's a good thing in a sense that, you know, failure is part of the process. You don't always, you know, get the results you expect, and you know, I feel like, just in my opinion, college is the best way, or you know, probably the best time to start an entrepreneurial venture, or like join an entrepreneurial venture, because you just have so much to fall back on. You know, you're not working yet. A lot of people are excited to help you. A lot of people are excited to, you know, you're probably, for most of the startups in the garage as well, you're not paying anyone yet. So everyone is sort of like still volunteering, still like believing, excited to actually work on the project. versus when you're already starting your careers, it's probably a bit more difficult. You have to balance something, whatever you're doing in the career with entrepreneurship and everything. So just like, I think the two things I would say that sort of like made me interested to join the garage was, number one, the collaborative aspect of it. And that sort of like, there was no fear of failure, in a sense, like, okay, if you mess up, you can always learn from this. Yeah.
I think it's also like a very creative space, which was something that I don't know if I like initially expected going into it, but something that as soon as I like saw the creativity that's there and like the out of the box thinking that's encouraged was something that I definitely still really appreciate, since that's not something that you always find in kind of like academic spaces on campus. So yeah, definitely appreciate the creativity.
You talked about like the student community. For undergrads, are there opportunities to get to like what are staff resources look like, but also knowing that Northwestern has like graduate programs in engineering and in business and in all these different ways in different kind of programs academically that tie to a lot of the things that are happening in this space. Are there opportunities to connect with grad students and staff members as you're part of these spaces and as you're part of this community? And if so, any kind of stories about what that has looked like?
I have had a lot of interactions with like MBA students who also have startups in the garage. I've got to go to a speaker event for one woman who is creating an extension on Chrome to help you find like more eco-friendly apparel based off of what you were looking at. I also another company that I got to work for a quarter was called Amasu, and that's more of like a wellness company that they sell their product. And both of those were female founded, and both of them were founded when those two women were MBA students at Northwestern. So I would certainly say that I was able to get exposure, and it's really cool to kind of see, kind of what led them to go back to school. And to a lot of the reasons that they went back to school is because they wanted to have a successful business and be an entrepreneur. So kind of hearing their story and their timeline is really interesting and helpful as well.
So also being close to the city of Chicago, there's tons of businesses, organizations. There's also different like startup spaces and different communities there. What does that look like in terms of the opportunities for students on campus to be able to engage with like the local area? Obviously, there's global experiences with our academic programs all throughout. But what does that look like on the more local level, considering to be able to engage in these things, you're already balancing what does that look like to be a friend, a roommate, a student, and kind of involved in all these other things. So are there local opportunities to kind of be connected to that and to kind of see, okay, if I stay in Chicago, here are some communities and some networks that I really want to get connected to?
The garage really tries to facilitate a lot of those relationships for students. At the weekly family dinners that Isaac was talking about a little bit earlier, all of our residents come together, and every week we have a different speaker who's typically a founder based in Chicago who will come in and talk about their experience and answer any questions for students. And a lot of students have found mentors for their companies through that as well. And then additionally, the garage has a variety of different mentors for students available who are based in Chicago, and our Slack channel is open to past and present students from the garage who will constantly send job opportunities, speaker events, panels, events in the cities for students to attend. And so Chicago and the garage are very connected in that way, and it's a really cool opportunity for students.
Yeah, this is something that I actually attended just yesterday, basically. So, just alluding to what Elizabeth said, the garage has this like weekly newsletter that, sort of tells us, what are the things happening in the city, what are some like panels, events, stuff like that. And Northwestern has a good like relationship with 1871, which is a sort of like a similar space like the garage in Chicago. And they just had an event where the founder of Grubhub was speaking. And just like sharing, just like being there and saying, oh, I'm a student in Northwestern and everything, like they were really excited because they know about the garage, they know how big the entrepreneurship sort of culture is in Northwestern. And I think it really shows that, a lot of Northwestern students also have like memberships in 1871 where they just can come in and then we can come in and gain access to these events and just like network with the Chicago ecosystem for entrepreneurs. So I think that really helps and like brings Northwestern even closer to the startup ecosystem in Chicago.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great to hear kind of those connections, and also that alums, like even like the resource of like a Slack channel being open to alums. I think being able to still stay connected to those people and kind of have that continuous experience, both with Northwestern and the Garage, is really important. So during my time at Kellogg, I've been in education. I was a social worker. Getting an MBA, there were not a ton of people that were like in education. So one of the questions I always got asked about was like, so why an MBA? What are you interested in? You've only been doing nonprofit work. So I focused a lot of my time on like social impact and some of the nonprofit boards, some of those opportunities. Are there like any nonprofits or like social impact startups that are happening at the Garage, or spaces for students that are interested in kind of engaging and stepping into those spaces as part of the Garage that any of you know about?
There are two that come to mind for me. The first is called Square One. It's a startup that helps low-income students navigate the college process. And then the other is called Pedal Solutions, and that helps facilitate conversations about equity within the university and within classroom spaces. The founder of both of those companies is a friend of mine, and we very often have conversations about what's the balance between the social impact and making a profit for your company? How do you go the nonprofit route versus what would the benefits being of being a for-profit company? And those are conversations that everyone in the Garage is very open to having. And it's something that people really do their best to keep in the back of their mind as they're going through these projects.
I would also say a few of the startups have really cool products that are made, with some type of social impact in mind. So one of the pitch competitions I did when I was a first year at Northwestern, I'm blanking on the name for some reason, but the students who won the previous year, they had a design for an alarm system that could be attached to anyone's backpack or anything. And if they ever felt unsafe, it had like a piercing noise. So they actually had a prototype for that. And then they won that competition. So they were able to get money to produce that. So that was just, like one invention that students had, and were able to get funding from Northwestern with, something in mind to help people. There was another one, I believe it was called like City Tech or something. And theirs was all about, helping with like water filtering. I had to do with like that and encouraging like healthy habits among like hand washing. I think I may be missing a little bit, but I think those students may have graduated, but that was City Health Tech. Yeah, there we go. So that was another one where students a lot of time will just have like an idea that they are trying to help people.
Yeah, kind of along those lines, I was in a pitch competition and someone, their idea was, it was like gamifying sustainable practices, essentially. So they had like the root of their idea was social impact focused. And they, whenever they were discussing in like the early stages, they were very intent on the purpose being trying to encourage sustainability. And that was like the route that they chose to take with it. So definitely like students having the room to develop these ideas that are congruent with the issues that they're passionate about. And you can definitely see that social impact.
Thanks so much for those stories. Yeah, and Elizabeth, talking about Square One, I had worked with Zoe this summer to kind of have like a connection with our admissions office to be able to hear like, what does this look like? What sort of opportunities are there? My specific role in the admissions office is working with first gen and lower income students, as well as students from rural backgrounds. So really love being able to see startups that are focused on college access, since that's kind of like what I do, but also hearing like the variety of different programs that are for different identities within entrepreneurship, to be able to be surrounded by either female identifying leaders or leaders from other leaders of color, like whatever communities that you identify with, that there are those programs that are there to kind of help students get connected, both to mentors, but along with also kind of like starting their product. So great examples. One thing that all of these projects and being part of this community requires is time management. being able to do all this stuff is a lot. So any tips of how you manage your time, or what does that look like in terms of how you've been able to balance these ideas with, you know, being students? I also noticed that a lot of you didn't just list like one program that you're studying. Many of you were like, oh yeah, I'm doing this and this and this. Also, I'm involved in the garage. Let's talk a little bit about that. What does it look like in terms of like being balanced, in terms of being able to handle all those things and still being active and like being able to bring your best self to these different spaces that you're a part of?
As a senior, I will say you will learn a little bit more about time management in college. I thought I had it down packed in high school. Turns out no. I'm someone who just says yes to a lot of things, and I've definitely dug a nice hole for myself at it a few times. But you kind of just have to learn what your limit is. I personally learned it junior spring. That was my time where I was like, whoa, I have too much going on right now. I need to figure out how to lighten my load. So I don't want to scare you, but you'll probably reach one point where you realize you're working yourself too hard because you're just saying yes to everything. But then that's going to be an amazing learning lesson for you to plan things ahead in the future. Another great thing about Northwestern is because we are on the quarter system, that gives your academic schedule a ton of flexibility. So if you, for example, really wanted to do like one quarter working in the garage really hard, working to get your idea off the ground, you could lighten your course load and only take 3 classes that quarter, and likely you'll be fine. As someone who's a double major and doing a certificate program, I have personally been able to take 3 classes, I believe, twice already, and I'm going to be taking 3 classes again next quarter and 2 classes in the spring. So I was able to find a lot of time in my 4 years to kind of lighten my load if I knew that I was either in a really difficult class or was committing myself across many different programs at Northwestern.
Yeah, I would definitely second everything that Catherine just said. Like she said, in terms of being a senior, I thought I had everything figured out. And now I think back on it and I'm like, how did I make it through high school without using Google Calendar? And like different things like that I had to learn the hard way. Some good practices of keeping myself organized. And yeah, I mean, like I said, I live on Google Calendar. I will also say that there is kind of like this process that eventually kind of comes into play of like figuring out like where you want to focus your time and energy, since both can sometimes be in limited supply. But it kind of ends up being like a cool process, especially at a place like Northwestern, where there are so many different clubs, so many different extracurriculars, so many different academic opportunities to get involved in, that like you're not limited in that front. And then you have the process of like trying different things out and seeing what sticks and seeing what doesn't stick. And some things will stick, some things won't stick. But it can be an exciting process along the way as well.
Yeah, it's definitely not easy. Juggling, especially if you have your idea and you're actually like, really committing to actually get it off the ground and everything. Like, even the nature of the work is very different to like schoolwork, because it's like you're probably, managing meetings, you're probably talking to the legal team, you're probably talking to like different things. So it's a different dynamic than schoolwork. But, just picking up off like what Catherine and Jake said, I think just like knowing your limit is really important, as well as like, I feel like, when it comes to like time management, it's not that you don't have the time, but it's like, what are your priorities, right? Like, what fits in your plate? Like, what are the things that you want to focus on in this quarter, for next quarter, let's say. And if like, let's say next winter quarter, I'm going to, sort of like have an app off the ground or like release the app, I'm probably going to spend a lot of time in marketing, probably spend a lot of time in like making sure the product is ready. So yeah, like it's going to take a lot of time in meetings, probably have to lighten my course load. So I think that really has to go back to like, knowing what works for you, as well as knowing like, okay, like what are the things that just knowing your limit basically.
Wonderful. Yeah, I think that balance of and knowing where to go forward and where to pull back is tricky. And I don't know, many times in high school, it seems like the story is often just do more and say yes more. But I think that process of learning to balance is so important, both for ourselves and for the different projects that you're working on. One question that we got in the chat was if any of you have lived at Ayers, and if that has any like benefit to being part of like entrepreneurship community, or if there's if housing kind of plays into any sort of the opportunities that are available at Northwestern.
That's an interesting question. So I know Ayers in particular, like a lot of students who like live in there, there'll be some programming going on that's more business oriented. But it's, you know, nothing that will hold you back for not living in Ayers at all. I think students can get involved in entrepreneurship in any ways. And I wouldn't really say it's, you know, getting you necessarily ahead, but I do think that they provide a little bit more resources, probably encourage you to go to NCA, which is Northwestern Career Advancement, a little bit more. And then I think what's most helpful with things, those are res colleges. Res colleges are dorms that have themes to them. So Ayers is our business theme dorm, just for context for everyone. But I think the greatest benefit is that you're surrounded by like-minded individuals. So you're surrounded by students who may want to go into the business field, and you can kind of have those conversations. Maybe they're studying certain things, or maybe they also want to get involved in the garage. And so you can kind of help each other out to figure out those resources. And that's definitely a benefit as a freshman, because when you come up to Northwestern, you'll see there's a lot of programs across the board, and you'll probably be bombarded by a lot of upperclassmen trying to recruit you to their own clubs. You'll probably put your name on 50 plus listservs. So, you know, having someone or being around other individuals who also want to go down a certain path, and you can kind of figure that path out together, I think that's helpful. But by no means is anyone hindered by not being a part of that, just because there's so many ways to learn about the resources. And upperclassmen, we're not scary, and we really like to help the undergrads kind of find their paths. Like I know I do, certainly. I love when freshmen talk to me. So I think it's like a great opportunity if that is something you're interested in, but not something that will kind of determine your path either way.
So another question from the chat: is there a limit to the number of projects that you can participate in the garage that can be done in like a calendar year, or are there any sort of like limitations on what you can actually do, other than like, you know, we all have the same 24 hours theoretically to do everything that you all are doing. But are there any sort of limitations that students should be kind of aware of as they're going into these different programs that are available?
There are no limitations on how many projects a student can be involved in. The one rule at the garage is that you have to be a tinkerer for at least 1 quarter before you can apply to the residency program. So if you're really interested in getting involved in the garage, I'd recommend signing up for tinkerer the second you step onto campus, so you can apply winter quarter. But other than that, there are no restrictions that I know of.
And then once you apply for residency, is that something that stays with you, or is that something that you're kind of like reapplying for as you're going throughout, or is that kind of like as long as you're a resident and you're working on a program, is that kind of how it works?
So once you're admitted into residency, you do have to reapply every quarter, but the idea is that if you're coming to the garage, working in the space, attending all the family dinners, you will continue to get residency.
Cool. Another question from the chat. So say you have a lot of ideas of things that you want to see happen, but you don't necessarily have the skills to be the person to kind of like lift that off the ground. Are there spaces or programs that you might recommend that would be a good a space for someone that has these ideas that they want to like connect with other people to kind of help bring in people around this idea? So I'm thinking of someone that has like a really great vision and maybe like a really precise plan, but we need someone that can do marketing. We need someone that can do product design. Most people don't have all of those skills contained in themselves anyway, but can you talk a little bit about what that looks like in terms of coming more from like a visionary or like a brainstorming side to be able to engage in some of these communities?
Yeah, so obviously I'm a little biased, but I think that Launch is a really great program for students that are kind of at that point. Whenever we start the program, we assume that no one has like any prior entrepreneurship experience or knowledge. They just have an interest in entrepreneurship. So we really try to cater like from the very beginnings of like the product development, business development process. And then we have a lot of students who after the end of the 10 weeks, they'll then move into other programs in the garage, because now they've come away from those 10 weeks having not only gained a lot of like knowledge regarding the product development process, but they've also come away with like a full cohesive pitch that they can then take into some of these other spaces with more of a focus, and also having now built connections with other students, whether in like their specific group or also just within the program. So at least that's how I was whenever I first got involved. I just knew I was interested in entrepreneurship, but I had very little idea in terms of like where I wanted to take that interest, what that interest could manifest in. And I found a lot of support and resources through Launch.
I would also suggest startup matchmaking. So after our 40 teams pitch this past quarter, we had about 200 students who were then looking to get involved in those teams. So you can say, hey, like, this is my name, this is what I'm working on, and I'm looking for a software engineer. And then you'll have 10 emails the next day of people who are interested in working with you on your project. So that's a really great way to recruit other students who maybe have some of the skills that you need to help get your project off the ground.
All right, so a lot of starting things up, a lot of like bringing things together is about time and energy. However, as you get into these later stages, capital is also super important, right? That's the necessary part. Are there any, you've talked about some pitch competitions, and I imagine that there's likely prizes involved with that. Can you talk a little bit about what does it look like for students that are interested in getting capital? Maybe that's through pitch projects or through other resources that are available on campus, and what that kind of looks like in terms of going from the ideation stage into more of like building and development.
The garage has a master spreadsheet that has all different college pitch competitions, when they occur, when applications are due, what stage your project has to be in, and it has all of that information. And all college pitch competitions, you can receive funding without giving up any equity in your company. So they're all non-dilutive, which is a really great opportunity for students. And that's something that really only exists when you're a student. And then Northwestern has their own pitch competition called VentureCat that's held every year. And that is exclusively for Northwestern students, and a great opportunity as well.
And also the club I was in, Arch, they also have their own list of pitch competitions that are going around in the Chicagoland area for students to do. So it's not just restricted to colleges ones, but it's more just restricted to local ones. And then in addition, I know there's a name of another pitch competition hosted by Northwestern, because I did it when I was a first year, and I'm blanking on the name, but I know it's not VentureCat, but I still get emails from them once a year. So these emails will also just pop up in your inbox regardless of whether you are in the garage or not. You'll definitely be hearing about, I don't know, it's not Wild Hacks either. It's going to come to me as soon as I get off this call. But it was run by Northwestern, just for Northwestern students, and Northwestern faculty were the judges. And so one team got to walk away with a pretty big prize. And so some cool startups have gotten funding, but it is really nice because a lot of that information is pushed to the students too. So it's not too hard to go out and find it. The information will come to you.
Yeah, I guess I also want to say like, probably I want to take like a step back actually. And like, as important as getting the money is also like making sure you know how to like pitch, because that's like, you know, what is necessary to get the money, right? So I think like the garage has a lot of resources to prepare for pitch competitions, how to make sure that you prepare well, you know, in addition to the programs like Jumpstart, VentureCat, Propel, Little Joe Ventures Fellowship, like which all have some prizes as well.
Okay, I got the name of it. It's Improve NU. It's hosted by ASG, which is our student government on campus. So they have their own, and the startup idea has to be something having to do with improving our local, like Northwestern community. Got it.
I love that. When it comes to you, you're like, I know it's going to come to me at some point. It just, but also cool to see like the different scope, right? So if you are wanting to focus within and pitch among other college students, NU specific or broader beyond that. Thinking about different projects that have come through the garage, are there any examples of projects that started at the garage that kind of serve as like, I don't know, the gold standard, or like to have like the biggest scale now? I know the garage hasn't been around for a ton of time, certainly not as long as Northwestern, and the entrepreneurial spirit that Northwestern students have. But in the kind of the time span that the garage has been around, are there projects that people kind of like talk about as like, oh yeah, this is the project that started here, and look at what they're doing now, to kind of give students that are tuning in an idea of like, okay, this is the sort of scale that can happen within a few years if things are going right.
Yeah, there are a lot that come to mind. Some of my personal favorites would be Brew Bike, which was a coffee shop that started in Northwestern and then expanded to, I think, 7 or 9 other college campuses. There's one called Minimal Snacks, which is air dried beef jerky. They just finished their first round of sales and are now going and renewing their product because it went so well. Another one that I really like is Pedal Cell. It's a device that you can put onto your bicycle, and when you pedal, it generates power, so you can like charge your phone as you're biking. And these are all projects that students continued with post-graduation.
Yeah, I can name several as well. I think one that I can highlight is Authentic Media Ascension, AMA. Really good. It's basically a media company that has, sort of like advised and helped like creators in social media. If y'all have heard of, we're on YouTube, and one of the biggest players is Mr. Beast, and like, Jesser and all these different like, YouTubers. I think Authentic Media Session has helped advise these YouTubers, and they were just recently acquired by Jelly Smack. So now, the CEO or the founder is now like one of the directors or like one of the VPs in Jelly Smack, which is exciting. Also, another good friend of mine, Kevin, is doing Inferno Guard, and it's a success that keeps going, right? He's still in the garage, and he won Venture Cap grand prize last year, and he has gone on to go to like, I would say like, Elizabeth mentioned the Google Sheet with all the different like, pitch competitions. He probably has nailed like more than half of it. I have no idea, but basically, yeah, he's a star in the garage as well. I also want to say though that like there are some people who don't end up doing entrepreneurship after graduation, and that is fine. In a sense, like, getting that like experience, getting like that like sense of like, okay, this is what entrepreneurship is. Maybe they go into like their jobs first and eventually end up into entrepreneurship again. And since the garage just started in 2015, we will get to see that later on, right? But I think even now there are successes, and I guarantee for sure in the future there will be successes. So we'll just have to see.
I think that's really a great word of wisdom as well, that like, even if you don't continue on specifically in entrepreneurship, just like if you are an English literature major and you do not go on to be a faculty member, or you don't do something that is directly tied to what you did, it's not a failure. You still learn, you're still getting skills, you're still building community. Really love and appreciate the way that you all have spoken to the people you've met, the experiences and kind of the perspectives that you've gained. And all of that is applicable to whether that is job one that happens right after college, or to a career, or just who you are as a person going about the world. I think that all those perspectives really kind of help build up who you are, as well as kind of what that community that is so important at Northwestern, that really sets the bar for what that is. One quick question maybe for Isaac. For international students, oftentimes being involved in entrepreneurship, there might be different barriers that they may face versus like domestic students. Are there any resources or programs that you're familiar of that are around to be able to help students kind of overcome some of those barriers that they may face?
Yeah, so I think like for international students, there are regular international startup office hours where, if there is a question about like, let's say, how you can incorporate your business in the US as an international student, or like specific questions that are sort of like geared towards international students, there usually can be someone from the legal side or someone who can advise those issues. I think like just having a conversation, if you actually want to take it to the next step with your OISS, which is your international student advisor, is actually going to be very beneficial to know, like, sort of like what you are dealing with. And, if you are immersed in the garage even more, there are even more like office hours or like, more like sessions where you can schedule and sort of know more like about your place as an international student, whether you want to like work on a startup full time, or you want to incorporate it, and all these different endeavors that come up with being an international student.
Wonderful. So we're getting closer to our end of our time here. So maybe as we're kind of ending, I know we've talked a lot about the entrepreneurship aspect. Thinking back to, as many of the students that are tuning in are probably prospective students, thinking back to why you ultimately chose Northwestern, can you maybe, if each of you can kind of talk a little bit about what that was like as you were considering colleges, why you chose Northwestern, and then if that is tied to entrepreneurship, kind of like how you have, what was the kind of like spark that you saw? Maybe it was being on a tour and hearing about the garage while you were on campus. Just a little bit about why you were drawn to Northwestern and what ultimately helped you decide that this is the place that you wanted to not only kind of engage in the entrepreneurship community, but also in the broader university community.
I can go first. So what initially drew me to Northwestern is the flexibility. I think the flexibility is good for whether you're a person who just has so many things that they want to do and they don't know either like how to narrow it down, or, they know that they can't really do that on a semester system. The quarter system is great for people who just have a laundry list of everything they want to study and do. But it's also fantastic for people who are unsure what they want to study or don't really know what they want to do when they graduate, because you have a lot of time to explore and figure that out. My roommate, she didn't declare her major until spring of sophomore year, which is when you need to put something down, but you can always change after. So the flexibility is just absolutely insane. So it's really good for all those people. And then really why I fell in love with Northwestern is the innovation. I know this is like an entrepreneurship like panel, so you probably think that like I redesigned my why Northwestern for that, but I didn't. I'm a tour guide, and at the end of every single tour I give, I always say the one word that comes to mind when I think about Northwestern students is innovative. And that comes in the form of the garage, but it also comes in the form of so many different programs and things that students are studying and the paths they want to take. I always think about it this way, that at a lot of different semester schools, there's kind of a linear path on what students will study. They'll do X, Y, Z, they'll graduate, and they'll go on to something else. But at Northwestern, it's kind of just like a maze of people crossing paths, shooting up together by collaborating, studying something else, switching majors, in the most chaotic, but like beautiful and innovative way. So that's really how I like to explain like why I just fell in love with Northwestern, why I'm here, and why I'm going to be sad when I graduate in the spring.
Yeah, kind of similar to what Catherine said, specifically the first part with truly just having so much room to explore everything that you might be interested in. That was definitely a big reason why I first became interested in Northwestern. I so vividly remember being a senior in high school and just having very little concept of what I wanted to study, what I wanted to get involved in. All I knew was that there were a lot of different things that I wanted to explore. And Northwestern really felt to me like the first place that didn't really treat that as like an obstacle, but instead is like an opportunity to fully engage with so many different kinds of people, so many different kinds of opportunities, whether that be entrepreneurship, whether that be something different. And yeah, like I said, that was definitely something that really initially got me interested in Northwestern, but has also definitely proven to be true 3 years later down the road. And then I would say the kind of like second part of my why Northwestern was definitely the collaborative feel of the campus, that I remember touring it as a high schooler and still feeling just how collaborative the space felt, which isn't always true whenever you have a school that is so strong academically. So I was truly so pleasantly surprised that everyone that I talked to, everyone that I met, and everyone that I continue to meet as now a senior at Northwestern really wants you to succeed and really wants to support you in that process.
Yeah, I just want to echo everything that they said. My why Northwestern focused on like the combination of arts, academics, and athletics that we have here. There aren't a lot of places where you can go to a D1 school, take drawing classes and engineering classes and journalism classes in one quarter, and also see so many incredible plays put on by other students. All the a cappella groups are incredible. It's just such a cool environment to be a part of. And then I always like to say, like, the reason I stayed here and why I'm excited for the next 3 years are the people that I've met. Everyone I've met is so supportive. It is really such a collaborative environment. And that's my why Northwestern, and then why I want to stay at Northwestern.
Yeah, I think just echoing what everyone said, I think the flexibility and the collaboration is just amazing here. I think, one of the reasons I picked Northwestern was because as a computer science student, there are a lot of schools, and there are schools that really focus on the computer science aspect and everything. And I just wanted to go to a school where I could like apply it and do stuff outside it as well, whether it was doing like entrepreneurial ventures, joining other clubs, doing some music, stuff like that. And after coming in here, I think like I want to add a third thing to that. So flexibility, collaboration. The third one is just like how much advising you get, whether it's office hours, whether or not, you ask for help, whether or not you have like a problem, you can always there is always someone that you can ask for help with, whether that's an upperclassman, it's a mentor, it's the director of the garage. And those three things, collaboration, flexibility, and advisory, those three things don't only apply to my time in Northwestern, but also like the entrepreneurial culture in Northwestern. Yeah.
Thank you all so much for sharing that kind of reflection on Northwestern, but also for joining this panel. It is not a very calm time at Northwestern right now. You all have so much going on. So really just want to say thank you, Jake, Elizabeth, Catherine, Isaac. Thank you so much for joining, for sharing your experiences, for being part of this community, and being able to share with with me, but all the students that are tuning in over on our YouTube channel. As finals week keep going. Good luck to all of you with your ventures as the quarter wraps up. And yeah, thank you all for joining. For everyone that's here on YouTube, thank you again for joining us. If you have questions about the admissions process or Northwestern, we have a lot of information on our YouTube channel, but also on our website. And we are so glad that you were able to join and get a kind of a deeper look into what that looks like to be a part of entrepreneurship here at Northwestern. Thanks so much. Have a good night.